When you're ready to create your virtual views, it's helpful to first think about the way that you've named your tags and how you want to group those tags potentially into assets. So to help us work through this project, I've created a list of tag names. My historian name is Jay Nepper. I'm logging all of these tags into a single data set, and that data set is project demo. And then the rest of the tag name in this first example would be East, which represents a region, Site 01, the equipment that I'm looking at, which is a conveyor, and then my speed tag. And here at the end is a 0001. This represents the instance of that conveyor. So if I have two speed tags in Site 1, there could be a speed tag for conveyor 1, and then here a speed tag for conveyor 2. So let's go ahead and just diagram this out real quick. We have region, we have site, we have equipment, we have equipment instance, and then we have the actual sensor, the piece of I/O that it represents. So as I can see, all of these represent East site tags. So all of these are East. And then I have multiple sites, it looks like. I have the first group of these are Site 1. And then we move to Site 2. And when I look at equipment, I've got some conveyors. And then also crushers. Then here on Site 2, it comes back to conveyor. And crusher. Okay. Now our equipment instance we pick up here at the back. So this was instance number, first we had instance number 1, and 2, 1. And we finish up there. And then we have our actual sensor names. So this was speed, then status, amperage, full level, status, speed, status, level, and status. Okay. This gives us a bit of an idea of how our asset model is ultimately going to start to take shape. Now, when I look down below at the next group of tags, I'm going to see that other than the region changing, I'm really still dealing with the exact same equipment in the same instances. So I've still got conveyors, I've still got crushers, and I'm working with the same tags. So for this demonstration, I'm not going to continue to lay this out. Note that I'm laying out these columns here in Excel just simply to help outline the naming status of my tags. This is not required. This isn't something that you would typically even do when you're building a virtual view. This is more for your benefit to see how we've named those tags. So let's talk about how I want to ultimately have these tags show inside of my virtual view. If we think about it, I've already kind of started highlighting it here in my layout, but ultimately what I want to do is create new structured tags that represent the region, the site, the equipment instance, and the sensor that it represents in one clean tag name. And so I might do it this way. I might start with East. Now with Canary, we're always going to use a dot to represent hierarchy. So within the East region, I have sites. And I have sites that I can show like this, Site 01. And then underneath of a site, I have equipment. In this case, a conveyor. And this conveyor is the first instance of a conveyor, meaning it is conveyor number 1 at this site. And and this tag that it represents is speed. So for the next example, it would look almost identical, except it is not conveyor number 1, it's conveyor number 2. Same thing here. It's site 1, it's conveyor number 1, but it's the status tag. How about here? East, site 1. Now it's a crusher, and it's crusher 1, and it's the amperage. So the goal is to use the Canary Virtual Views to take the tags that are in the archive inside of this project demo dataset and reshape and alias them so that they appear in this fashion here on the right. And we can do that relatively easily using regular expressions, especially once we understand what it is that we want or how it is that we want these tags to be structured so that they properly represent our assets. And so once we have them essentially reshaped into this format here in column G, then we're going to tell our system that the first part of the string before the first dot, that represents our region. And then the second part of the string up into the second dot represents a site. That the third part of the string up into the third dot represents our equipment and our equipment count, or our equipment instance. We call this our asset type and our asset type instance. And then finally we have the tags that belong to the asset type instance, which belongs to the site, which belongs to the region. So let's go ahead and look at how we would do this. Inside of my Canary admin, I have a views panel. And when I look at my views panel, the first thing that I'll see is my historical archive view. And when I browse through this, I see all of the different data sets that I'm writing to. Within those data sets, I see all of the tags, all 97 of them that I've just shown you. So typically, if a client connects to the historian and browses the historian archive inside of the project demo dataset, this is what they would see. What I want to do is give the client the opportunity to browse for tags as assets instead of just tag names. And so to do that, I'm going to create a new view. We'll just name it Project Demo. And I have to pick the data sets that I would like to have included inside of this view. I can pick multiple data sets, but we'll just use the tags in Project Demo. So within Virtual Views, I have 4 different windows as I'm creating this view that I can operate within. The 2 on the left are telling me the status of the view that I'm creating. It shows me information about my views as a service overall. Then it shows me information about the view that I'm creating. The bottom window gives me all of the tag listings as they appear inside of the historian and as they are currently seen inside of my view. Here in the top window is where I'll create and edit rules using regular expressions to reshape my tags into this format. So the goal here is to take all of the tags as they appear inside the archive and alias them so that they appear in this new format. We're going to only use really a few different pieces of regex to do this, and I'll walk you through what each thing does as we work on it here. So let's start first with getting rid of the underscores in the tag name. as we can kind of see, we've already got some breakage between the region and the site and the equipment. So I'm going to start just by working on these first pieces here. So it's going to be a real simple rule. I'm just going to simply do a match on the underscore and replace it with a dot. And what I can see is that down below, my replace has taken the tag above, or the string above, and has replaced it to look like this. Now when I execute that rule, it shows me that it's matched on 97 of my tags. If I browse those tags again, I'll see that what was once in the system like this, in the archive like this, is now inside of this view going to show to the client in this format. Now I'm a little out of order here, in that I've got my tag name, and then I've got this value at the end, which really isn't helping me at all understand what this tag is, and then my equipment instance is hanging off on the end. So what I'd like to do is get rid of the dash value and then move the equipment instance count of 0001 or 2 and put it in here after the piece of equipment. So to do that, what we need to do is use regular expressions to create capture groups. Capture groups are a tool that allows me to take a part of the string and to essentially do a cut on it, or a copy of it, and then reinsert it later. And I can create multiple capture groups and then reinsert those capture groups inside in a order of my choosing. So what I want to do is create a capture group on the region, the site, and the equipment. That would be my first capture group. I want to create a capture group of the equipment number, and I want to create a capture group of the sensor, in this case speed. And I want to reorder them so that after my first capture group, I take the equipment instance number and insert it after conveyor or crusher, and then bring back in my speed or my status. Let me show you how you do it. So capture groups are created using the parenthesis in regular expressions. So I can say parenthesis and then use a wildcard that tells me everything up till the third dot should be inside of this first capture group. And the wildcard essentially is a dot, and then I tell it to go forward with the plus. I use a question mark, which represents a lazy look ahead, and tell it to not go the whole way to the end, but instead stop at the first dot. So if I end this with a parenthesis, I've essentially created a capture group on the region, east. I said match on any character, that's the dot, apply that multiple times, that's the plus, but stop on the first dot. So that's what the lazy or the question mark is doing. It's saying stop, but stop the very first time you find a dot. Now, if I take the question mark out, it will now stop the last time it finds a dot. In this case, that's the dot after conveyor, which is exactly what I want. So I am now at the dot after conveyor on this string, which means my next capture group can start right afterwards and stop when it finds a dash. So again, I put another parenthesis, a dot for the wild, the plus for the look ahead, and this time I'm going to ask it to stop on the dash. So I'll write the dash in, and when I hover over, I can see that I've captured the SPD. The dash is not in my capture group because it's matched on this dash, but it is not included in the parenthesis. if I put it inside of the parenthesis, now all of a sudden that dash is in my capture group. We'll put it back on the outside. So in my string, I've started at the beginning. Now, if I wanted to use proper regular expressions, I would use the caret, and the caret tells it to always start at the beginning of the string. And I've worked through the string, and I'm now here at the dash. So that means that if I create a third capture group and capture everything to the end, I would have value 0001 in there. So let's take a look. Dot, everything to the end, and then I can tell it to go to the end of the string with the $sign. Caret, beginning of the string, $sign, stop at the end of the string. And as I can see, I've created that last capture group. It says value 0001. Now, that's not really what I wanted, though. I don't want value in that last capture group because I'd like to actually omit it from the text. So I can simply add value here with the space after it outside of my capture groups, and it's now no longer part of that. All right, so now I can do a replace. And I use the $sign to represent a capture group, and then the number of the capture group that I'd like to show. So if I wanted to start this entire news tag with the capture group number 3, I would just put a 3 here, and you can see that what it's replacing is showing down here. Now I don't really want that. I want the first part to be there. And I want my instance of my conveyor to show up next. Now perhaps you've already seen down below that I'm going to have a bit of a problem here. My conveyor has a dot after it, and it has a dot after it because I've stopped that first capture group with the dot inside of the parentheses. So watch what happens when I put capture group number 3, which is the instance of that conveyor, in. You can see that the instance of the conveyor is not inside of the section of the tag with the conveyor. The dot tells me that that is a child of the conveyor, not part of the conveyor itself. That would be real easy to change this. All I have to do is come up into my first capture group and put the escape on the dot outside of that capture group. So now my first capture group stops before the dot. The dot is not part of either the first or the second capture group. All that's left is to bring the second capture group, which is the tag name, or the sensor name, back in. But I do need a dot, and I did not capture a dot as part of the speed tag. So again, I could just choose where that escape character goes. So the backslash says escape on a dot, meaning don't treat the dot as a wildcard. Instead, look for the dot specifically. It might be helpful to look at some other videos that we have that actually will go into more depth about teaching regular expressions if you have more questions beyond this. But look, there we are. First capture group, third capture group, second capture group have been reordered. That's it. Now, if I wanted to add more context, I could actually do so at any point as part of this replace. So, for instance, if I wanted, before the speed tag, before it said speed, if I wanted it to be something that actually had some text in it, or maybe on the back side of it. Anything I type as part of the replace will show up in the tag down below. All right, let's hit OK and see how our rule has been applied. It matched on 97 of my tags. And just like that, if we look at all of these tags, they've all been reordered now, no matter what region or what site or what instance of equipment it was, with that one simple regular expression rule. I've aliased all of those tags. Now that means that when the client browses for tags, this is the format they're now going to see. The last part of this is to actually tell the virtual view what each part of the tag hierarchy represents. And that's by, we do that by assigning asset names. So we'll start with an asset rule. And we're going to use our regular expressions again and say that the first part of this, start at the beginning, and up until the first dot. So start at the beginning, everything moving forward until the very first dot. The dot is everything. The plus says moving forward. The question mark says don't try to go to the end, but stop at, and then the backslash dot says at the very first dot. This is called a region. So any unique string up until the first dot is going to get assigned an asset type of region. And that's exactly what's happened. It's looked at our tags and found that there's an east, mid-Atlantic, north, northeast, southwest, and west region option. And that's because there was unique string for each of that first section of tag name. Notice that it's nested the remaining tags under each of those regions. So that means now, if we create a second asset rule and tell it that what belongs inside of the site is anything that is unique up into the second dot, we should see child assets of the regions. So we're going to do the same thing. That stops us at the first dot, but we want to do the second dot. So this rule says look for any string at all up to the first dot, then look for any string at all up to the second dot. We'll call that a site. The site rule applied, it matched on 97 tags and found 13 unique sites. I can look at my regions and see that there's 2 child assets under east, site 1 and site 2. If I look at mid-Atlantic, there's 3, site 1, site 2, and site 3. So what's left? Well, we have conveyors and we have crushers. And we want to be able to understand how many crushers we have as assets and how many conveyors. So here we'll do another asset rule. Now I can continue to stack my groupings to each dot. So I could continue to do this to the first dot, then do it again to the second dot. Now I'm going to say that if it starts with CONV and has any string of numerics after it, which is a \D, looking forward, stopping at the first dot, then that is a conveyor. Let's take a look. Under site 1, it found 2 conveyors. It also still has some other crusher tags that have not been assigned a sub-asset type beyond a site. So right now, those tags are living associated only to the site, not to a piece of equipment called a crusher. But we do have tags that are assigned to a conveyor, which belongs to a site, which belongs to a region. Now let's create one more rule, and we'll assign these crusher tags. And we're going to use a little different piece of regex than what we've been using to do that. One is not right, one is not wrong. But just for an example, here I'm going to just basically say anything up until we see crusher is a crusher. And now we look at a site and we see that there is a crusher asset with amps, bowl level, and the status tag, conveyor assets as well. I can do a little bit more of this model. I might want to change the way that some of these tag names appear. So at any point I can do that. I could come up here and say, you know what, before I actually group these things, let's add a rule, and if it has STS at the end of it, I'd like to rename that to say status. So the reason this works is it's matching on the part of the string that is at the very end. It has to be at the end. That's what the $ says. So if the string, or the tag name, I should say, ends in STS, then do a replace on the STS with the word status. I can apply that, and I can see that it matched on 41 tags. So now when I look at my conveyor, instead of showing STS, you can see the name says status. And I can do the exact same thing with SPD. And inside of my crushers, I can do the same thing with bowl level. All right, now if I hit create, then my model will be ready to go, and I'll be able to browse it. So there's my project demo virtual view. The very first thing when I start to browse that I see is the first set of hierarchy inside of the tag, and that's the region. If I click once, I can see that this has a model type, or an asset type, of region. Then within region, there are sites. In this case, there's 2 sites. In the Mid-Atlantic, there's 3 sites. And each site has multiple pieces of equipment. Notice that there were 2 conveyors, O1 and O2, but both are recognized as conveyors. And there is a crusher. And a crusher has amps, bowl level, and status tags. Now look here. As I'm browsing these tags, and I'm looking at this amps tag, it tells me that the actual tag in the historian can be found under the project demo dataset, and this is the tag it's linked to. That's the historian item ID. Here's how it's appearing inside of our view. So now for a client, if I browse this view that I've just created, you can see how the tags appear to the client. And I think we can agree this is a much easier way for someone who's not maybe overly familiar with your tag names to be able to come in and find tags. In fact, with the search enabled, we could easily ask for all the speeds of conveyors that carry a designation of 1 that are in the West. I hope this was helpful. If you'd like to get more information, look at some of our other videos, as well as reach out to Canary staff. We're always happy to train and teach, and you can reach out at info@canarylabs.com.